During a response to a radiological emergency resulting from an incident or accident at a Minnesota nuclear generating plant, emergency workers may be at risk of radiation exposure above the EPA Protective Action Guidelines. Plans and procedures are established to ensure proper exposure controls and decontamination services are available for emergency workers, vehicles, and equipment used in response and recovery. Emergency worker decon personnel are notified and placed on standby at an alert emergency classification level. At a site area emergency or general emergency classification level, the EWD centers are set up, staffed, and activated. The EWD center consists of a decon chief and multiple stations. Each station has a set of procedures to guide personnel through the decontamination process. All personnel must sign in and be assigned to a station. Before beginning a shift, personnel will be issued proper dosimetry. All dosimeters are to be worn on the outermost piece of clothing between the neck and the waist. The decon chief will provide a briefing for the event when minimum staffing levels have arrived. For more information regarding the briefing, please refer to the Emergency Worker Exposure Card. The decon chief is responsible for maintaining direction and control for all emergency worker decontamination center operations. Tasks include maintaining communications with the county EOC, activating the EWD center, maintaining 24-hour staffing levels, maintaining communication with EWD station leaders, ensuring radiation contamination controls are followed, preventing cross-contamination, advising workers on all other aspects of the EWD center operations. Before the center is operational, the decon chief must brief all EWD personnel at the beginning of their shift. The decon chief needs to arrange for field samples to be picked up and transported to the Minnesota Department of Health lab by notifying the county radiological officer. When advised by the Radiation Protection Specialist, or RPS, notify the county radiological officer to make arrangements for disposal of radiological waste. Contaminated waste must be placed in a secured location until pickup. The decon chief maintains communication with the county operations chief and updates them on when the EWD center is operational, the number of vehicles and personnel processed, contamination and radiation levels of emergency workers, contamination and radiation levels of EWD staff, number of field samples that are processed and going to the lab, medical emergencies and injuries. Other duties include scheduling breaks and refreshments, responding to questions from EWD personnel, and arranging shift relief. At the end of the shift, brief the replacement decon chief. Ensure all EWD personnel report to the Personnel Monitoring Station. For deactivation, ensure station supplies are restocked and inventoried. Receive all forms and documents collected at the EWD Center and submit them to the county EOC. Ensure that all equipment and station kits are returned to their storage locations. Inform all staff to sign out. Notify the county EOC operations chief when the EWD Center is deactivated. Personnel at this station include a station leader and at least one traffic controller. Tasks include verifying, logging, and controlling the traffic flow of emergency worker vehicles into the EWD Center. Setup instructions are included in the setup kit. Make sure to post all signs and barriers. If you're missing anything, contact the decon chief. Obtain your dosimetry and make sure all personnel are wearing them properly. Proper personal protective equipment must be worn at all times during EWD operations. PPE can be obtained from the setup kit. All personnel at this station must wear high-visibility clothing. If at any time you have questions about radiation, contact the Radiation Protection Specialist, or RPS. For procedural or setup questions, contact the decon chief. When the station is set up and operational, notify the decon chief. Once operational, the station leader or traffic controller greets all incoming vehicles and logs the vehicle and occupants. Ask to see the occupant's credentials or identification. If the occupant is EWD Center personnel, direct them to the employee parking lot. If they are emergency workers, send them to the next station. The general public is advised to visit the nearest reception center for monitoring. Refer media to the Joint Information Center. The traffic controller also maintains surveillance of the vehicles in the parking lots to ensure the integrity of the decontamination facility. Document and report any issues or concerns to the decon chief. At the end of the shift, brief replacement station workers, report to personnel monitoring, and then sign out and return dosimetry. Personnel at this station include a station leader, portal monitor operator, a monitor, a recorder, and a driver. Tasks include identifying the location of contamination and radiation levels detected, documenting contamination levels on the VS&D form, supporting the transfer of field samples to the radiation protection specialist. To set up the station, obtain the instructions included in the setup kit. Post all signs and barriers and contact the decon chief if you're missing or need additional supplies. Assemble the portal monitor. Instructions are included in the portal monitor case. Perform an operational check. Obtain survey meters and dosimetry from registration. Ensure all station personnel are wearing dosimetry and proper PPE at all times. If at any time you have questions about radiation, contact the radiation protection specialist. For procedural or setup questions, contact the decon chief. When the station is set up and operational, notify the decon chief. The portal monitor operator instructs emergency workers in the vehicles to drive through the portal monitor. If the vehicle is clean, instruct them to drive to the clean lot. If the vehicle is contaminated, direct them to the vehicle monitoring area. Ask if there are any environmental samples. Notify the RPS if the emergency workers are returning with samples. Follow environmental sample processing procedures. For clean vehicles, after emergency workers park the vehicle in the clean lot, they need to report for monitoring and deliver any environmental samples to the radiation protection specialist. For contaminated vehicles, have the driver and passengers put on shoe covers and instruct them to the personnel monitoring station. Follow the proper monitoring techniques. Cover the survey meter probe with plastic. Hold the probe a ½ inch to 1 inch from the surface and move the probe 1 to 2 inches per second. If you or the probe contacts a contaminated area, change your gloves or the plastic covering on the probe as necessary. First, monitor the exterior of the vehicle. Focus on the front bumper, grille, wheel wells, and door handles. If contamination is found, continue with the rest of the vehicle. Once that is complete, move to the interior. Focus on the driver and passenger seats and floor, steering wheel, gas and brake pedals, and equipment and sample storage areas. If applicable, monitor any equipment in the vehicle. Complete the equipment survey and decontamination (ES&D) form, and transfer the form and the equipment to the vehicle decontamination station. When monitoring is complete and all contaminated areas have been identified and recorded, the station driver will place a plastic cover on the driver's seat and bring the vehicle to the next station for decontamination. Monitor the area as outlined in your procedures. If radiation levels are above background, decontaminate as outlined in the procedures. If levels remain above background after attempts to decontaminate, notify the decon chief. After moving the vehicle to the decon station, change out gloves and have feet monitored before returning to the monitoring station. At the end of the shift, brief replacement station workers, report to personnel monitoring, and then sign out and return dosimetry. Personnel at this station include a station leader, a monitor, a recorder, a driver, and a decontamination specialist. Tasks include decontaminating vehicles and equipment, documenting the results of the decontamination. For setup, obtain the instructions that are included in the setup kit. Post all signs and barriers. Ensure that a container is available to discard contaminated materials and PPE. If you are missing or need additional supplies, contact the decon chief. Obtain survey meters and dosimetry from registration. Ensure all station personnel are wearing dosimetry and proper PPE at all times. If at any time you have questions about radiation, contact the radiation protection specialist. For procedural or setup questions, contact the Decon Chief. When the station is set up and operational, notify the Decon Chief. Review the VS&D form and locate the contaminated areas and levels for each area. The decontamination specialist decontaminates vehicles according to the procedures. Clean the exterior of the vehicle from the top to the bottom so as not to contaminate an area that is clean. The following methods can be used to decontaminate a vehicle. Dry or wet. For localized contamination, start with the dry decon process and progress to wet decon until the vehicle is clean. Remember to change gloves frequently during the decon process. For dry decon, wipe with dry cloth, remonitor, and discard cloth into contaminated waste container. For wet decon, spray the affected area with a cleaning solution. Wipe area with clean dry cloth and remonitor. If still contaminated, wash with soapy water, rinse with low-pressure water, then remonitor. If still contaminated, wipe with Radiac wash. Rinse with low-pressure water and remonitor. If still contaminated after 3 attempts at wet decon, cover the affected areas with plastic or paper and continue to decontaminate other contaminated areas before moving the vehicle to the dirty lot. Once the exterior is clean, move to the interior of the vehicle. For smooth interior surfaces, wipe contaminated area with damp cloth or paper towel and then remonitor. Discard cloth in contaminated waste container. If still contaminated, wipe with Radiac wash and remonitor. Discard towelette in contaminated waste container. If still contaminated after 3 attempts, cover the affected areas with plastic or paper and continue to decontaminate other contaminated areas before moving the vehicle to the dirty lot. For porous or fabric surfaces, vacuum with a wet-dry vacuum and remonitor. Be sure to use a vacuum equipped with a HEPA filter. If still contaminated, use a dry brush to scrub the area. Use vacuum again and remonitor. If still contaminated after 3 attempts, cover the affected areas with plastic or paper and continue to decontaminate other contaminated areas before moving the vehicle to the dirty lot. If elevated readings are observed in the hood area, check for contamination on the air filter. Once decontamination is complete, remonitor the areas to ensure they've been decontaminated adequately. Document the decontamination methods used and the results. When decontamination is complete, the vehicle may be released, returned to the field, or held at the EWD Center for further decontamination. Use the recommended contamination level guidelines posted at the station to determine the next action based on the outcome of the decontamination process. Instruct the driver to move the vehicle to the next appropriate station and bring keys to registration. Monitor the area. If necessary, decontaminate until it is at acceptable levels. When all areas are clean, a new vehicle can enter the station. At the end of the shift, brief replacement station workers report to personnel monitoring and then sign out and return dosimetry. Personnel at this station include a station leader, a portal monitor operator, a monitor, and a recorder. Tasks include monitoring emergency worker personnel for radiological contamination, documenting the location of the contamination and the radiation levels detected. To set up the station, obtain the instructions included in the setup kit. Post all signs and barriers and contact the Decon Chief if you're missing or need additional supplies. Assemble the portal monitor. Instructions are included in the portal monitor case. Perform an operational check. Obtain survey meters and dosimetry. Ensure all station personnel are wearing dosimetry and proper PPE at all times. If at any time you have questions about radiation, contact the radiation protection specialist. For procedural or setup questions, contact the Decon Chief. When the station is set up and operational, notify the Decon Chief. The personnel monitoring station may be set up 2 different ways: doffing prior to entering the portal monitor or doffing after entering the portal monitor. This video shows doffing prior to entering the portal monitor. Instruct the individuals to remove their dosimetry and disposable personal protective equipment following the proper doffing procedures. Dispose all PPE in a contaminated waste container. Instruct the emergency worker personnel to walk through the portal monitor. If the portal monitor alarms, instruct the individual into the contaminated line for further monitoring. Ask the contaminated individual if their vehicle was flagged as clean at the vehicle portal monitor. If so, instruct the driver to bring their vehicle to vehicle monitoring. If the portal monitor does not alarm, instruct the individual to registration. For contaminated individuals, follow the proper monitoring techniques. Cover the survey meter probe with plastic. Hold the probe ½ inch to 1 inch from the surface and move the probe 1 to 2 inches per second. If you or the probe contacts a contaminated area, change your gloves or the plastic covering on the probe as necessary. Begin by monitoring the sides of the person, starting at the top of the head. Next, monitor the front of the person, pausing for 5 seconds over the mouth, nose, and throat. Lastly, monitor the back of the person, including the bottoms of their shoes or feet. Identify contaminated areas and levels on the individual. Inform the recorder of the location and the radiation levels. The recorder completes the emergency worker survey and decontamination form, EWD, with information pertaining to the locations and levels of contamination found on emergency workers and direct them to the personnel decon station. If the emergency worker is contaminated, monitor the floor area where they were standing. If the floor is contaminated, decontaminate the area and remonitor. If the area cannot be decontaminated, cover the affected area with a clean piece of plastic and continue monitoring emergency workers. At the end of the shift, brief replacement station workers, report to personnel monitoring, and then sign out and return dosimetry. Personnel at this station include a station leader, a male and female decontamination specialist, a male and female monitor, and a male and female recorder. Tasks include decontaminating personnel, documenting the results of the decontamination. To set up the station, obtain the instructions included in the setup kit. Post all signs and barriers and contact the decon chief if you're missing or need additional supplies. Obtain survey meters and dosimetry. Ensure all station personnel are wearing dosimetry and proper PPE at all times. If at any time you have questions about radiation, contact the radiation protection specialist. For procedural or setup questions, contact the decon chief. When the station is set up and operational, notify the decon chief. Review the contaminated emergency workers EWD form to determine where contamination exists and determine if the contamination is whole body or localized. Determine the decontamination method. If whole body, the best process to decontaminate a person is to have them shower in lukewarm water using soap and shampoo. For localized decontamination, washing can be done at a designated sink or in the shower. Have the worker remove clothing near the affected area. The worker should wash the contamination for 2 to 3 minutes. Use lukewarm water and mild soap. Monitor the areas where contamination was found and record the results. Repeat this process up to 3 times. Use a soft bristled brush during the second and third washings. If contamination is still present after the third attempt, inform the decon chief. It may be necessary to decontaminate parts of the body that are not easily washed. Following are some methods to use to decontaminate other parts of the body, such as the mouth or nose. Mouth. Rinse mouth several times with water and discard water into sink or drain. Nose. Blow nose into tissue or wash rag. Discard tissue, wash rag into waste bag. Wash hands with water and mild soap. Eyes and ears. Flush with lukewarm water. After decontamination, monitor the worker's entire body to ensure there wasn't a cross-contamination. Inform recorder of the results. After full body monitoring, if the worker is clean, direct them to registration. If the worker cannot be decontaminated, notify the decon chief to arrange transportation to the appropriate medical facility for further decontamination. At the end of the shift, brief replacement station workers report to personnel monitoring and then sign out and return dosimetry. Personnel at this station include a station leader and registration personnel. Tasks include assigning and tracking radiation monitoring equipment and dosimeters, registering decontaminated workers, maintaining custody of vehicles, recording radiation doses of emergency workers, collecting all data and forms from the station leaders, maintaining 24-hour staffing and call-out roster. To set up the station, obtain the instructions included in the setup kit. Post all signs and barriers and contact the decon chief if you're missing or need additional supplies. Obtain survey meters and dosimetry. Ensure all station personnel are wearing dosimetry and proper PPE at all times. If at any time you have questions about radiation, contact the Radiation Protection Specialist, RPS. For procedural or setup questions, contact the decon chief. When the station is set up and operational, notify the decon chief. After the station is set up, begin timing intervals for staff to read their dosimeters. Ask the decon chief to have station leaders report their dosimeter readings at the proper intervals. Register all EWD Center personnel as they arrive at the EWD Center. Ensure all survey meter and dosimetry calibrations are correct. Perform operational checks on survey meters before assigning them to personnel. Zero all direct reading dosimeters and register all dosimetry before assigning them to personnel. Register decontaminated emergency workers and review and complete all the applicable forms, including the Emergency Worker Survey and Decontamination Form, the Vehicle Survey and Decontamination Form, and the Equipment Survey and Decontamination, before they leave the EWD Center. Ensure that registration is circled on the bottom of the EWS&D form. If it isn't, refer the worker to the station indicated on the form and ask the decon chief to assign someone to monitor the registration area to ensure that it was not contaminated by the worker. Record each emergency worker on the emergency worker registration sheet. Obtain the dosimetry from the emergency worker along with any other paperwork. Package the dosimeter forms, dosimeters, potassium iodide, Ki, and Ki ingestion record, and any other forms for each worker. If the worker has not been told to stop taking Ki, they should keep their tablets and Ki ingestion record with them. The Vehicle Survey and Decontamination (VS&D) forms and Equipment Survey and Decontamination (ES&D) forms will be dropped off at registration by the driver from the Vehicle Decontamination Station. Observe the referrals on the bottom of the form to determine if a vehicle can be released. To release vehicles and equipment, return the vehicle keys to the emergency worker. To hold a vehicle and equipment, notify the worker that the vehicle or equipment cannot be released at the present time. At the end of the shift, brief replacement station workers. Report to personnel monitoring and then sign out and return dosimetry. Personnel at this station include a station leader and a radiological protection specialist, or RPS. The Radiological Protection Specialist provides radiological technical assistance to the EWD Center staff regarding monitoring and decontamination. Tasks include receiving, storing, and securing field samples, arranging for transportation of environmental samples to the Minnesota Department of Health lab, ensuring proper decontamination procedures are being followed, monitoring and updating background count rates. To set up the station, obtain the instructions included in the setup kit. Post all signs and barriers and contact the decon chief if you're missing or need additional supplies. Obtain survey meters and dosimetry. Ensure all station personnel are wearing dosimetry and proper PPE at all times. If at any time you have questions about radiation, contact the County Radiological Officer. For procedural or setup questions, contact the decon chief. When the station is set up and operational, notify the decon chief. Ensure that contaminated waste disposal locations are set up and easily identified. The Vehicle Monitoring Station Leader will advise you when environmental samples arrive. Conduct an initial background radiation reading. Communicate the background radiation reading to all stations and update charts. Continue monitoring background radiation levels at the frequency outlined in the procedures. Observe monitoring and decontamination activities. If incorrect monitoring or decontamination procedures are happening, advise the monitor or decontamination specialist on the proper techniques. Examples of incorrect techniques are monitoring too fast, holding the monitoring probe too far or too close to the surface, Overspraying contaminated areas with water. Reaching over contamination boundaries. Not changing gloves or boot covers when crossing boundaries. Touching or brushing against potentially contaminated surfaces. Respond to facility worker inquiries and questions regarding monitoring and decontamination guidelines. Contact the Decon Chief if additional information is needed. Maintain cross-contamination controls. Stay in the clean areas unless requested to a contaminated area to provide assistance. Before entering a contaminated area, put on shoe covers. After providing assistance in the contaminated area, report to the Personnel Monitoring Station for monitoring. Remove shoe covers when exiting contamination control areas. Ensure radiological contaminated waste is handled properly. Locate contaminated waste locations and ensure that all personnel are aware of its location. Ensure that the waste container is lined with a plastic bag. Notify the Decon Chief when contaminated waste accumulates. Contaminated waste is placed in a secured location until pickup. As environmental samples arrive, emergency workers will remove each environmental sample bag from their vehicle. The environmental sampling bags will be placed into an additional plastic bag and secured at the top with tape. Take a smear sample to ensure the outer bag is not contaminated. The emergency workers will transfer the environmental sample to the RPS by filling in the appropriate sections of the chain of custody form. Contact the county radiological officer to arrange for pickup and transportation to the Minnesota Department of Health lab. Field samples must be placed in a secured location until pickup. At the end of the shift, brief replacement workers. Sign the chain of custody forms for all field samples, relinquishing them to the new RPS. Report to personnel monitoring and then sign out and return dosimetry.